right, well, thank you all for coming on a Friday afternoon, rainy Friday afternoon. I was asked to do something on grant writing. I offered to either do a hands-on workshop where we would work on your own grants, but I was told, no, can you do a more generic presentation about grants? So I'll do one into two parts. It'll be in two parts. I'll talk about general concepts, and then I'll show you a flow chart that kind of takes you through the grant writing process. When I came to Columbia, I had hardly ever written a grant. I'd written small grants. And I've been doing it for the last 20 years, mostly successfully. And I think, that's kind of the first thing I want to talk about when I talk about general concepts. Anyone can be a successful grant writer. There are no particular skills that you need. There's really no particular training that you have to have. The one thing that you do need to be a successful grant writer is common sense. You need to have common sense when you write your grant. Don't ask for things that you shouldn't be asking for. There's really anyone, whether you're a novice grant writer or an experienced grant writer, anyone can write a successful grant. Like everything else in life, the more you do it, the better you get at it. The more success you have, the more success you will have. Success breeds success. Okay, but you have to start someplace, and anyone can do it. One of the misconceptions people have about writing a grant is that it's a linear process, that you go from identifying a grant to writing the grant to getting the money and enjoying the money. It's not. Grant writing is not a linear process. It's more what I would call a circular process. It means that you have to go back, reassess, rewrite, rethink some of your assumptions before you move forward. So instead of thinking of grant writing as a linear process that moves effortlessly forward, think about it as this kind of like circular process where sometimes you seem to be going backwards, but you are ever moving forward, but not at the rate that you thought you would. Okay? So there's nothing wrong if you have to go back to do certain things. That's just the way grant writing works. It doesn't work in this kind of like linear process as you move forward. But if it moves as a circular process, then also it's something that takes time, okay? I think the main reason why people write grants that are not successful is because they don't give themselves the time to go through the process. If a grant is due on Monday, February 21st, you will not have a successful grant if you start writing it in the evening of the 20th, okay? You have to give yourself time. You have to give yourself time to think about the grant. You have to give yourself time to write the grant. You have to give yourself time to have other people comment upon your grant. You have to give yourself time to ponder what it is that you want to say. So it takes time. So plan ahead, Do not expect, the grant writing process to be a simple process that you can dash off in a weekend. It's not going to happen. And trust me, I sit on plenty of committees that read grants. You can immediately tell the grant that doesn't have any time put into it. It just kind of like pops out of the scenery. Okay? So plan ahead. You know yourself. I know myself. I know that whatever I do, I will never write more than 3 pages a day. That is my limit. I've learned this through experience. I've learned this the hard way by not being ready for certain things that I've done. I know that it's about 3 pages a day, so I know my limit. You know your own limits. Plan ahead. Okay? All grant proposals begin with an idea. I know the tendency is to say, oh, here's a RFP, request for proposal. I'm going to write a grant. Okay? But that's putting the cart before the horse. Recently, maybe a few weeks ago, Chris and I were approached by people, not language people, at Columbia, who told us, oh yeah, well, there's been an RFP and we're going to put in a project and a grant, and they talked to us, and my ears were starting to fall off after an hour, because it was obvious they had no project. They had no idea. All they had was a desire to get the money that was available. Okay? But that's not how it works. It has to start from your idea. It has to start from there. If it doesn't start from an idea, something that you're passionate about, something that you believe in, something that you want to do, then you're basically a grant proposal in search of an idea. And you can, once again, see this in the final product. You can tell that the person who is putting in for the grant, or the people who are applying for the grant, don't really have an idea, are just trying to meet the criteria of the grant without really knowing what they're doing, and so forth and so on. So start thinking already, what is it that you want to work on? Okay? That's more important than what's available in terms of funding. Perhaps there is no funding available for the things that you want to do. And that's just the way life is. But you need to start with an idea. You cannot start from here is a proposal or a call for proposal or an RFP, and then I'm going to tailor my ideas to that RFP. That is a recipe for disaster. Unfortunately, not all ideas are grant worthy. Just because you have an idea doesn't mean there's a grant out there for you. Okay? You know, that's life again, you know. Some ideas, people will say, you don't need a grant to do this. You can do it without a grant. Other ideas, people will say, well, who cares? You care, but nobody else cares. Okay? So you have to be self-critical. You have to be able to look at the ideas that you have, and you have to have an honest discussion with yourself as to, is this worthy of a grant? Okay. Some ideas are, some ideas are not. I've had harebrained ideas. Luckily, most of the time, I've had people who have told me, this is a harebrained idea. Don't waste your time asking for a grant. You will never get a grant for this. Okay? So, be self-critical. If you cannot be self-critical, talk to other people. Have other people help you in this. Ask, what do you think about this idea? Do you think this idea can get a grant? Okay? But remember, just because you have an idea doesn't mean that you're going to get a grant. All grants start from an idea. Not all ideas are grant worthy. You know, again, common sense. Grant proposal should be explicit and specific. You are writing a grant to address a particular problem, and you have a specific solution. I've seen grant proposals, and you're wondering, what the hell are they writing about? I am going to solve the problem of language learning in America. Really? You know? Give me money, and everyone will speak Italian by tomorrow. These are not proposals, okay? Be explicit, be specific. What are you doing? Why are you doing it? Who are you doing it for? What do you need from us, from the grant, in order to get this done? How will you and I, as the grantor, know that you have succeeded? What are the criteria that you will use to know whether what you're doing is successful? Explicit and specific. None of this grand, you know, and again, Chris and I were listening to these people, and that's what they were peddling. You know, you could fit almost anything in what they were talking to us. It was generic, it was non-specific, and it was just, going back to the previous point, there's money out there, I need to get my share of it. I've seen more proposals fail because of this. You may not agree with the guidelines. You may think the guidelines are crazy. You may think that the person who wrote the RFP didn't know what he was doing, but that's the RFP. If they say they want 5 pages, well, guess what? You've got to do it in 5 pages. I've had people here at Columbia tell me, I need at least 20 pages to explain my idea. Sorry, 5 pages, 6 pages, 8 pages. If they want it by tomorrow, midnight, they want it by tomorrow midnight. They don't want it a week later or 3 hours later. You have to respect the proposal guidelines. If they want margins of 1/2 inch all around, they want margins of 1/2 inch. If they want a particular font size, they want a particular font size. You're not here to double guess what the writer of the grant has decided they want. You're here to give them exactly and precisely what it is that they want. If they want a literature review, include a literature review. If they want a line item budget, give them a line item budget. If they want a budget narrative, give them a budget narrative. If you're lucky, the grant, the RFP will say, you can call us or you can contact us if you have questions. If it says that, do so if you have questions or you want help. If it says, we do not want you to contact us, don't contact them. I mean, I have seen grants where the person that collects them for the readers has written, this person contacted us despite the fact we said no contact. Up into the trash can. Follow the RFP guidelines precisely. Okay? Remember what I said at the beginning. This is common sense. I don't even know why I'm doing this with you. This is common sense concepts. Don't be discouraged. Don't take it personal. It has nothing to do with you. Perhaps they got 17 times the number of grant proposals they thought they were going to get, and they can only fund 3. Okay? Perhaps yours was great, but another one was better. Perhaps you don't really fit the category of what they want to do. Don't take it personal. Don't be discouraged. Try again. Remember, it's like writing a paper. It's like going to a conference. You build. Your conference paper builds upon the paper that you submit for publication. This paper you submit for publication builds upon the book chapter. The book chapter builds upon the book. Don't be discouraged. Don't take it personal. It has nothing to do, more often than not, the other thing I hear a lot when I sit in these sessions is, I wish we had more money. There are some great grant proposals here. It's unfortunate that we can't fund all of them. Okay? So if you get a rejection, don't think they don't like me, I can't do this, they hate my ideas. No. It may have nothing to do with that. You know? More often than not, good grant places that seek grants will provide you with feedback. They'll provide it for you, or if they don't, you can sometimes ask for it. You can say, can you tell me why my proposal was not selected? And they will give you feedback. Take it seriously. Somebody took the time to read your proposal and think about it. Take their comments critically, look at them critically, but take them seriously. And see whether you agree with some of the things they say and build it back in for your next iteration of your grant. And that iteration can be to the same granting agency. Just because the granting agency did not fund you this year doesn't mean they never want to hear from you again for the rest of your life. Okay? Resubmit it the next year, same project, only better, version 2. Okay? So these are general concepts. These apply, in my opinion, to any grant writing that you do. It doesn't matter whether you're applying in-house. It doesn't matter whether you're applying for a small grant or a large grant. It doesn't matter whether you're applying for a grant by yourself or with others. Okay? I think these 8 general concepts are things you should follow. They're good general kind of practices for you to do. Okay? So I'll take you from this to kind of the grant writing process, or at least the process I follow when I think about writing a grant. And then if you want, we'll do some practical exercises, because it's always good to put theory in practice. Okay? I gave you a flow chart, so this is what I follow, and we can talk about it. It all starts from a project idea. You got to start from an idea. Okay? Where do you get your ideas? From talking to people, from literature that you read, from your own experience, from something that you've noticed, from something someone else has talked about and you've thought about how to adapt it to your own particular situation. But you got to start from an idea. Once you have an idea, you can look for a funding source. You're no longer just looking for a funding source. You're looking for a funding source with a focus. I'm looking for small grants. I'm looking for collaborative grants. I'm looking for grants in Italian literature. I'm looking for grants in Greek pedagogy. I'm looking for grants in technology and language learning. You're already focusing. You're drilling down into the kinds of grants that are available. You can talk to other people. You can talk to us at the LRC. We're constantly getting bombarded with RFPs that we send back out to you, and then we get yelled at because we're sending out too much mail. Okay? There are offices on this campus where you can go and you can ask what grants are available, either at Columbia for Columbians or in general. We are a member of the Consortium for Language Teaching and Learning. That consortium makes money available to you. You should know about it. You should know about their deadlines. You should know about the kinds of grants they will support. And you may want to start thinking, does my idea fit the guidelines for this RFP? You can also get on mailing lists. There are any number of mailing lists around the country from agencies, from professional organizations that will send you RFP as they are announced. You can get onto mailing list in Europe if you want. I wouldn't dismiss that. Sometimes they're looking for partners. Okay? But you have to do that kind of legwork to try to see what's available. And then you've got a decision. Is my idea fundable with what I found? If the answer is no, well, you're going back. Okay? You're going back to either refining your idea or doing some more search looking for an RFP. I mean, again, all this is common sense. But you would not believe the number of people who come barging in my office saying, I don't have an idea, but I need money. Or, I have an idea, but nobody wants to give me the money that I know I deserve. Well, make sure you find the right fit for your ideas with the right RFP. Once you've found the right RFP, and we'll talk about 2 of them that are available to you every year at Columbia, read the RFP. You would be surprised at the number of people who don't read the RFP. The only thing they read is the title and the sum of money that will be awarded. But you got to spend time to read the RFP. What do you read it for? Well, try to assess what the purpose of the RFP, of the grant is. What is it that they're trying to support? Highlight key phrases and words. If they seem to be using these words and these phrases all the time, it might be a good idea for you to drop them in your proposal. Okay? So read them with a critical eye. Note key concepts. You know, are there things that they're particularly, I mean, if they write an RFP, it's because they want something, you know. So make sure your idea, the thing you have in your mind, fits these guidelines. But also read it for simple things like deadline. If you look at the RFP and you see that the deadline is 2 days from the moment you're reading it, chances are, unless you have a grant that's already written, you're not going to make it. Okay? So look for deadlines. Look for the amount. You know, if you have an idea that you feel requires $27,000 and they're only giving $2.5, okay, the match isn't there. If you want money to buy equipment and they say no equipment purchases allowed, don't waste your time. So read it carefully for these little details. You would be surprised at the number of people who do not read the RFP. Okay? Once you've done that, here's the part that everybody says, oh, I don't want to do this. Well, you're going to have to do a literature review. You're going to have to situate your idea within the ongoing debates in that field. Okay? You're going to have to demonstrate to the person who's reading the grant that you are aware what the critical literature says about this field, broadly speaking, and how you are situating yourself and your project against this critical literature. Do you understand? Do you grasp the current theoretical underpinnings of the field that you claim to be working in? You have to demonstrate this. This will have to appear in your proposal. Even if it's 3 sentences, it will have to appear someplace. Okay? So you better make sure you've done, your homework, and that you understand the specific literature about the topic at hand. So what are you trying to demonstrate? Either that there are gaps that you're trying to fill with your project, okay? There is something that's missing and your project will provide that missing piece. Or it's an area that already exists, but you want to build on it. So perhaps somebody has done something for the elementary and the intermediate level, and you want to adapt it for the advanced level. Or perhaps somebody has done something for the teaching of modern Greek, and you want to adapt it for another language. Okay? So you either are filling gaps or you're building on something. It's going to be very rare that you're going to be discovering something new. Okay? Very new that no one has done before. It can happen. I'm not saying it doesn't happen. But chances are you're either filling gaps or building on. Okay? You're not inventing the earth and the moon. I'm saying these things, and I know it sounds like I'm making fun, but this comes through in your writing. There needs to be a certain critical distance and a certain critical modesty against the claims that you make. Okay? You cannot come and give me a paper and say, I have noticed that heritage language speakers exist. Well, guess what? It's been noticed for the last 60 years. We haven't been waiting for you to notice that. Okay? But you get papers like that. So you have to be modest and critical. At the same, you have to put a proposal that's modest, but at the same time you have to show people that you are aware of the critical underpinnings and the critical discourse around that particular topic. You can always interrupt me if you have questions. I'm just blabbing on here. Okay? A lot of what we do is, I've seen this happen at this school, and I would like to bring it to this school and adapt it to my context. That's perfectly fine. Okay? I've seen people do that in this context, in this discipline, and I want to see if I can take an idea from this context, this discipline, and adapt it to my context, my discipline. That's perfectly fine too. Again, common sense. There is a problem. I have identified the problem. Here is what I want to do about the problem. Here is who is going to do what. Here is how much money I need. Here is how you're going to be able to tell, and I am going to be able to tell that what I'm doing is successful. I mean, this is common sense. Very often, and we'll talk about this more, grants, RFP ask specific questions of you, the person who is reading the RFP, that will guide you through the RFP. Can you answer these questions? One of that question is almost, and I almost guarantee this, is a question about, can you situate your projects in the current theoretical and critical debates? You have to be able to do that. Otherwise, you're more often than not reinventing the wheel for things that have been done already. And then what you get when people look at your project is, why don't they just take what this person has done? Why are they reinventing this? One answer is because they're adapting it, but still you have to show that you know where it's coming from. Okay? Once you've done this, write a summary. It took me forever to write my dissertation because I thought I was going to solve the world's problems. No, I'm serious. I finished my coursework in 86. I didn't turn in my dissertation until 92. It kept growing. Everything was important. And if everything is important, then guess what? Nothing was important. And I finally managed to get it done when somebody sat me down and said, can you tell me what your dissertation is in a couple of sentences? Until you can, you don't know what you're writing about. This is why it's important to write a summary. Okay? Because it focuses your ideas. What is it? About a paragraph? 200 words? 250 words? It's a summary of what you want to do. It's a summary of your proposal. It gives you the broad picture, but it guides you at the same time. It guides you in the writing of the proposal. And again, this is not static. You can come back and revise your summary based on what you eventually write, but it will provide you with a guide. And you can always go back to it. As I was wandering in the wilderness of dissertation writing, once I had the 2-3 sentences I knew described my dissertation, I would always go back to it and say, this doesn't fit that. I'm not doing this. Or yeah, okay, I'm on target here. Okay? It provides you with that frame. Okay? So do it. You can also get more mileage out of it. You can always use your summary as an abstract because most proposals will ask for an abstract. Okay? So you can have double duty. But write a summary, write it before you write your proposal. I know it sounds counterintuitive. It sounds like you need to write the summary after you've done the work. But actually, doing it before will provide that frame to guide your writing. You can always then edit it and correct it and go back. But this will be your map. And you will decide that, you know, I'm really off the map, or I'm really right in the middle of the map. Like I said, succinct, 200, 250 words. Who you are, what you plan to do, why it's important, what are you asking for, what are you going to do with the money if we give it to you. Okay? Write a summary. I often never did that, and when I didn't do that, guess what? I spent a lot of time writing drafts and big 18-page papers that went nowhere. Even today, when I write a grant or when I write a paper, I go back to the abstract, which is a summary of what I had said I would do when I sent in my paper for acceptance of my draft. And I use that to guide me. I said I would do this. Am I doing this? Or am I going off on, wandering in different directions? Trust me, I was all over the place on my dissertation until somebody focused me with that statement. And she kept throwing me back in my bedroom and saying, go back in there and come back out with another statement. Nope, makes no sense. Go back in, work on it some more. Okay? Once you have a summary, you can start writing your draft. Write a draft. I should have put draft parentheses S, because you're going to write more than one. It's not a singular process. It's a plural process, but it does start with a draft. What do you put in a draft? Well, whatever you have in your outline, because before you write a draft, between the summary and the draft, I would produce an outline. Bullet pointed outline. And say, this is my summary, this is what I want to do. This is my draft, these are the limitations on my draft. 5 pages, 10 pages, 1 page, whatever the limitations are. These are the pieces of the draft that must be there because the RFP says they want this and that. How do I fit my summary to the draft? An outline will help you. Okay? It'll help you organize your thinking, and it will help you organize your writing. It helps organize your thinking because it helps you describe the various paragraphs of the various parts of your proposal. Again, look at the RFP. If the RFP is organized through a series of questions, chances are your outline could be the answer to these questions. Okay, just follow that as an outline. If they haven't done this for you, then you have to do it yourself. Okay? Again, certain agencies take this approach, others don't. Certain agencies will say, you can send us a draft or a summary. Very often, the larger agencies will say, send us your summary and we'll tell you whether you should even spend time developing a draft. Because they'll tell you, we're interested or we're not interested. And then you don't have to waste your time. But even the ones who just say, send us a draft, they'll want to see whether you're following some sort of logical outline. I'll just give you some pieces that I put in a draft. A title. It's the first thing people look at. It's the first thing, when I pick up something, I look at the title. So make sure it's brief. No 6-sentence title that goes on and on. Brief, succinct, okay, and explicit. That tells me in one sentence what it is that this grant is all about. Okay? Spend a little time, on your title. I know people like to toss off the title. It's an afterthought. But, remember, it's the first thing people look at. And when you have 37 proposals to look at, you're looking for excuses not to read some of them. I'm sorry, but that's human nature. Okay? So, succinct title. You need an abstract. Whoa, what can you use for an abstract? Your summary. Your summary and your abstract are more often than not the same thing. Okay? So, explain the key elements of what you're proposing, the general purpose of what you're doing, the specific goals you want to achieve, how you will achieve these goals. This is what we call design and method. Okay? And the significance of what it is that you're proposing. Contribution and rationale, or if you want to speak, in more plebeian, why should I care? Why the hell should I care? Why should I give you money? You have to tell me that. Don't expect me to infer it from your proposal. You have to tell me why it's important. You need an introduction. All papers, whether proposals or papers, need an introduction. It's not the same as the summary. You're introducing your topic, okay? That's the first couple paragraphs of your proposal, I would think. Covers the key elements of your proposal, a statement of the problem, the purpose of why you're writing a grant, stating explicit goals and objective. Again, you're not writing a grant in general. You're writing very specifically to address a very specific problem that you've identified. Well, if that's the case, lay it out there, okay? None of these general statements. The statement should provide a background and rationale for the grant and establish the need and relevance for it. You have to show me why it's important to you before I decide that it's important to me. Okay? If it's not important to you, then there's no way it's going to be important to me. Okay? So you have to show why there's a need for this and why you are the person who's going to do something about it. How is it different from what's already been done? I mean, assume that the people who are reading your grant kind of vaguely know something about the topic at hand. So, if somebody has already done it, why is it important for you to do it again? Sometimes it is important for you to do it again because it hasn't been done right, or because it's been done in a different context, or because it's been done by people who didn't know what they were doing, because you've identified problems with what's been done. There are reasons why it should be done again, but you should be able to explain these reasons. Are you going to be using new technologies, or are you going to be covering new ground? If you are, say so. Okay? So-and-so has done this. However, so-and-so, didn't do this, perhaps because when so-and-so was proposing or doing his project, this technology didn't exist. I now propose to use this technology to address the same topic that so-and-so did. However, anticipate the outcomes. Don't say, give me money and then we'll see. We'll see what's going to happen. Anticipate. Say, I believe that it is my belief that this and this is going to happen. Whether it does or not is a different question. You can always come back, and by the way, I'll say a few words about this later. You need to be honest. If you say, I want to pilot something to see if this works, if it doesn't work, don't think, oh man, I better tell them that it did because they gave me money. Tell them, it was a good try. I thought it would work. I thought this was going to be the result. Nope, Didn't happen. Okay, onwards. You should have a brief theoretical or literature review. So again, situate your proposal within the literature review. Or the broad theoretical kind of discussions around the topic. And then you should have the grant narrative. The grant narrative is the main body of your proposal. Okay? That supplies all the details that you've hinted at in the summary and in the introduction in detail now. And again, how much detail? I don't know. Depends how much room you have. You can't come and tell me, well, how can I explain, the usage of non-linear adjectives in Celtic languages if I don't have 52 pages to do it? I don't know, but you don't. Okay? So, depending upon the amount of space you have, this will dictate the amount of details you can go into. You have to decide what's important. Is it more important for you to go into detail about something and give them less of something else? Or is it more important to give them less details about the theoretical underpinning and more details about what you're actually going to... That's a guessing game. That's where the proposal is written. In knowing and being able to weigh what's important within the limits of what you're given. I mean, I have seen proposals where, you're given 8 pages, single or double spaced 8 pages to write a proposal, and I'm on page 7, and they haven't even stated the problem yet. Chances are, as I read this, I'm thinking, this is not going to get funded. We are still laying out the preliminaries, the prolegomenas, as Kant called it. Okay? But we haven't gotten to the philosophy yet. At some point, you're going to have to give a list of personnel. Who's going to do what? You, someone else, people working with you. You should be able to identify them. A well-written proposal identifies personnel, key personnel at least. If you give a proposal and you say someone, vague, will do something, vague, at some vague point, not very well written. You're going to have to identify. Sometimes you don't know, but those are usually the minor actors. I will be hiring a graduate student to collect paper. Better, I will be hiring Joe Simpson, a graduate student in my department who specializes in Celtic, lexicography, to collect papers. That shows that you've given some thought to the problem. Okay? But as much as possible, identify key personnel. If you're going to be the key person there, say so. That's not, the point here is not to be modest. The point is to be accurate. Okay? Especially since very often they will ask you to append, at least the bigger grants, a CV. So if you say, I'm going to be doing X, Y, and Z, I'll look at the CV and say, yeah, she's got the background, or he's got the background to do this. You're going to have a budget. If they're giving you money, they want to know where their money is going and what it's buying. You're going to come up with one budget, one of two types of budgets, sometimes both. A line item budget, which they want you to identify line by line what you're asking money for. So, personnel, $1,200. Coffee, $50. Movie passes, $25. Popcorn, 4 cans at $1.25 for a grand total of $10. That's a line budget item. Okay? Remember that in line budget items, very often there are things that you need to put in there that you may not be aware of. Often they will ask for cost sharing. They expect you, your university, your department, to cost share. If I give you $100, we expect you to put 30. If your university doesn't cost share, then don't apply for this grant, because that's an expectation. Or call the university or the granting agency and say, there is this limitation. What can we do about it? Often the university will say, okay, we will cost share. Or often in the sciences, not so much in the humanities. Or the granting agency will say, okay, we will waive the cost sharing. But you need to know this, don't assume it. Okay? So, for example, the Mellon Foundation will not they will not allow the university to add additional cost to a project. Okay, that's the other thing that sometimes the university will say, well, we're putting in the lights, we're putting in the water, we're putting in the seats, we're putting in the heat. So we're adding a percentage to the project to cover the lights, the water, the computers, whatever. Some foundation, some great agency will say, no, if you're going to do this, then don't apply to us. We expect you to take that bite yourself. So read it carefully, but you will have to have a line item budget, most probably, and very often now, they will ask for a budget narrative. What's a budget narrative? You take your line budget item and you explain what it is and what it does in the context of your project. So line number 1, $3,000 to pay me. Okay? Budget narrative. Stephane will be doing most of the writing of the grant, and it will be taking 6 weeks of his time, during which he will not be working, and you are paying for his salary. You are narrating the budget. Okay? Often, more often than not now, they will ask you for both. Line item budget and a budget narrative. It's not rocket science. You already know what it is that you want. You just have to be able to explain it and how it supports the broader structure of your project. And then the last thing that someplace in your proposal you should have is a timeline. When are we going to see this miracle product? A timeline, if possible, with milestones. Often they will ask you for milestones. And these milestones are often formal. They will say, halfway through your project, we expect a progress report of 2 pages telling us where you're at. So think in terms of a timeline, even if it's an open-ended timeline. What do I mean by this? If you're already thinking, these guys gave me $5,000, they can give me another 5. Say, this is the first phase of a 2-phase project. Okay? At the end of this timeline, I expect to have completed this. And if the project has gone successfully as I anticipate, I will be approaching you for a second dip in the honey pot. Okay? But you need a timeline. And you most probably need milestones on that timeline. If you tell me that you depend on a trip to France for your project, don't tell me that you're going to be writing the narrative before you've been to France. Okay? The timeline kind of shows these things. So that's the draft. Guess what? You should share your draft. I know we've all been brought up in the literature mentality that you sit in your office and what you work is the product of your mind and for you alone. No. Share your draft. Share it with your colleagues, share it with your friends, share it with people who know something about the topic at hand, and say, I am planning on submitting this to this RFP. What do you think? Okay? What do you think? Am I meeting the objectives of the RFP? What you're looking for is not pats on the back. Okay? You can get this from your mother. You're looking for critical readers. Someone who will look at your draft critically and tell you yay or nay whether you are meeting the criteria of the grant and whether what you're saying you want to do is explicitly and specifically laid out in your draft. Don't take it personal. I've had people telling me, what the hell are you saying? I don't understand a single word you write. Okay? I didn't take it personally. I had asked for that kind of response, and this is what I got. And I went back and rewrote it. But you're going to have to show it to someone. Again, drafts and proposals that have been circulated are often much better than the one that you've done by yourself at 3 a.m. in the morning as you're wondering where your pizza is and you're hungry and you just want to get it done. Okay? Going back to one of the concepts, you need time. You can't give me this like, oh, I've got a deadline in 2 hours. Can you read this and tell me if it's okay? I have my life too. So plan ahead, but do share your draft. I found that to be one of the most, first of all, it was one of the most difficult things for me to do because I didn't want people to look at my stuff. Why are you looking at my stuff? But I also found it to be one of the most valuable aspects of writing a grant. When I wrote the grants for the LRC, for the Mellon, these circulated. You know, a lot of people look at it. I wrote the first draft, but a lot of people wrote comments on it, took things out. I mean, I remember the VP looked at it and said, well, this is really interesting. Doesn't fit here. But it's interesting, so we should keep it. Okay? Might make a nice paper, but not for this. Okay? It gives you a reality check. And sometimes we do need reality checks. You know, yes, we do. You know, am I saying that I'm going to save the planet on $3,000? You know, somebody might tell me, no, it's not going to happen. You know, am I saying I want $25,000 to take, you know, attendance in class using a tablet, developing a program that I'm going to develop? Maybe we're throwing too much money at a problem that doesn't require that much money. Okay, so you need a reality check. That's what a second critical reader will provide, or a third critical reader. Do not be afraid to share with your colleagues. The other thing it will help you with is, remember, you're writing for an audience. You're not writing for yourself. They are the audience. And they'll be able to tell you if your tone, if the way you're writing is the proper way to write for an audience. Okay? When I write for a particular audience, I write different than if I write for myself, or if I write to my mommy, or if I write for publication. It's not the same as when I write to give a talk at a conference, because the audience is different. So you need to be aware of the audience, and critical readers will give you that feedback. And you notice there's a loop here. If they give you, when you share your draft and they give you feedback, sometimes you have to go back and rewrite the draft, okay? And sometimes you have to do it several times. Again, there's nothing wrong. I have written the Mellon grant that we wrote for Mellon. I wrote 8, 10 times, you know, over and over again, taking in comments from people, sometimes agreeing with their comments, sometimes disagreeing with their comments, and then it led to a discussion. Okay? But you got to do this. A classic. Classic. You got to proofread. You know how many grants? I'm not even talking about papers when I taught in the core. I was like, what the hell? Proofread. Even more so if you're not a native speaker of the language in which you're writing. I've had people give me papers that they were planning to submit for grants in France. And I was like, no, 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 not going to happen. Okay? So you need to proofread. If you give me a paper that has spelling mistakes, grammatical errors, typos, you're telling me as a reader of your grant that you don't really care. That's what you're telling me. If you can't spend the time it takes to care about your proposal, why should I care about it? And that's not just grant writing. When I was a tenured member of the faculty, we were reading dossiers. When you get 400 dossiers for a position, you are looking for ways to eliminate people. And if somebody can't even spell, simple things correctly, trash. Okay? So proofread it. Have other people proofread it. You know how many times I've proofread my papers and I've said, yeah, perfect, it's done. And then I gave it to Chris and it comes back, nope, 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 there's a mistake, forgot this, there's an E missing, wrong word. I don't mind. I give him almost everything I write he gets to look at. I mean, it's fine. Give it to someone else. And after they give it back to you, put it aside for a couple days and then read it again. Okay? All this means what? It's going to take time. You cannot do these things in a weekend. Okay? Give yourself time. Give yourself the love you need to write your proposal. Okay? Notice again, you've got a decision. Is it ready? Yes. No. 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 Yes. Okay? Review. Again, not so much proposal, but everything else. You know how many times I've gone online and I've said, yeah, okay, I'm ready to buy this. Buy, oh my God, I forgot this. Review. If they've asked for attachments, do you have the attachments? If they ask for a budget, separate, do you have a separate budget? Is it really 5 pages? If they said, I want this proposal written in the comic font size 6. Is it in the comic font size 6? Just review. Take the time it takes to just review to make sure you are fulfilling all the conditions of the grant before you submit. Do you need a signature from someone? Perhaps you do. And again, when I submitted the Mellon grant, I was ready to go. No. Columbia has to submit the Mellon grant, not Stephane. That means it has to go to the Office of Sponsored Projects. It means they have to open an online thing. It means you have to fill out their online forms. It means you have to get electronic signature from your chair and your dean. And I thought I could submit, the deadline was like 2 days. No, I had to run at the last minute to get these things done. So review. Make sure that you are fulfilling all the conditions that, for whatever reasons, they've included in the grant or your own university, institution, program, department has said that they want to do. And then, well, guess what? You get to submit. Send it in. If they want it electronically, submit it electronically. If they don't want it electronically, don't send an email. Send it in the mail. If they say they want it by FedEx, send it by FedEx. You don't know, We've had these little kinds of ups and downs, where I had the report for Mellon, but someone was insistent, I am going to go and give it to them in person. Mellon doesn't want to see you. They don't care about you. They just want to see it electronically. I had to then smooth things out. because, they're like, who's this guy showing up at our doorstep? We don't know who he is. So follow the guideline, submit, and then have a drink and wait. Okay? Relax. Chances are, if you follow the guidelines, you will be fine. Okay? You will be fine. And if you're not, you'll be fine the next time around. It's a process. Okay? No one is eliminated from grant writing at the start, or even for what everyone can write a grant. Okay? It's a matter of respecting the proposal, respecting your ideas, and respecting the audience for which you're writing. Okay? So that was my presentation. I mean, trust me, I've been doing this for 25 years. I still follow kind of a process. I could say now, I don't need to do it. I still do. It's a good habit to do. Questions? And then if you want, I'll go through some practical exercise with you. Any questions on the process? There are 2 grants that you should be thinking about applying for. The grants for which the LRC has funds, that your colleagues will decide whether you get, and the grants that the consortium makes available every year. It's money. If you don't claim it, someone else will claim it. I don't know if you've seen the guidelines, but I'll give you the guidelines. You don't have to work with Simon, so you don't know. It is always his fault. What I was going to say is, we could take a couple of minutes and let's go through these proposals and just highlight what you think are the requirements. And then see if you have an idea, if you can just write 200 words, about 5 sentences that address your idea within the context of this proposal, or of this RFP. The good thing about these 2 RFPs is that they're not anonymous. You know who is making the money available. You can come and talk to us here for the LRC grants. You can share drafts with us. And for the consortium, the same is true. I know all the people in the consortium, yes. I know what they're looking for. I can help you. I can guide your proposal towards what they're looking for. Okay? Does it mean that you'll be successful? No, there are other things that come into play. They funded Columbia 3 years in a row. It makes it more difficult for Columbia to get it for a 4th year in a row. Not impossible, but more difficult. Perhaps this particular year, your fellow language lecturers want to support the less commonly taught languages rather than, but that doesn't make it impossible, okay? Simon and I kind of know what's going on, and we can help guide you. But, again, give us time. Give yourself time to write a better proposal. Don't do it at the last minute. If you feel that you cannot get it done for this cycle, and trust me, you've already missed the consortium cycle, which I believe the deadline is next Friday. If you don't feel you can make the Columbia cycle in the spring, shoot for the fall. Give yourself the summer to think through your proposal. We're here. I try not to be here, but Simon will be here all summer, working, tied to his desk. Has this forlorn look on his face. So, looking at, starting with a consortium proposal, what's that money for? It's for a workshop. So, if you're going to suggest something, suggest a workshop. A workshop is not a symposium. A workshop is not a conference. A workshop is not a lecture by a leading luminary in the field. It's a workshop. It means that people are doing something and they're leaving the workshop with something that they take with them. Okay? So start by that. So if you don't have an idea for a workshop, perhaps you need to wait until you have an idea for a workshop. Okay? Anything else that you picked up on their requirements?
Either multiple languages or multiple institutions.
Multiple languages or multiple institutions. What the hell does that mean? Well, they're looking for something that has relevance across a number of languages. So reading strategies for advanced speakers in fill in the language, or they're looking for something that has relevance for one language but across multiple institutions. What if your idea doesn't fit into that? Well, you could say you're screwed, or you could say, why don't I take my idea and give it to Stephane and ask him to circulate it to his fellow board members and see whether there is a preliminary kind of, well, that sounds interesting. Why don't we look at it? Remember what I said. If you're working with an RFP that is open to you asking questions and getting inquiries, then use it. Instead of assuming that, well, you know, I can't do this, or, you know, I will do this, despite the fact that I'm not sure whether I should. Okay? So come to me and inquire and say, here's my idea. Do you think it fits within the parameters of the RFP? If I don't know, I will ask. That's my job. What else do you see? At some point, there must be a deadline. I'm sure there is one. Okay. 28th of February. Do you see somewhere a word that says annual or every semester? That will give you an idea how often this competition happens. So that if you don't make the deadline this year, you may be able to make the deadline next year or next semester. I think it says annual someplace.
So this is not every year, the consortium?
Uh-huh. Usually the way the consortium works is one semester they have a workshop, one semester they have a symposium.
They limit 3 proposals per institution.
They limit. So what happens? It means that here, locally, we're going to have to rank proposals if we get more than 3. And we will send the first 3. Okay? So a question to ask is, Simon, how many proposals has Columbia put together? If the answer is 18, you may want to rethink whether it's worth putting in a 19th proposal. If the answer is none, then it's like, maybe it's time for me to put in a proposal. Okay? So ask these questions. $5,000. That's not a lot of money. You think it's a lot of money. It's not a lot of money. So what do you do when you have something that really you're thinking, I'm not sure? Either you limit the scope of your proposal, of your workshop, or you look for additional funding. You use this as the basis for asking for additional funding. You say, should I be funded, I will be seeking additional funds from. You don't have to give a list of the people who have given you money for sure. You give a list of the people you will be asking for money. In your case, I would think the other language department, your language department, the language institutes, centers, that may have an interest in what you're doing, the vice president's office, the dean of the humanities, you know. And then you say, you know, I feel confident that I'll be able to raise an additional blah, blah. Remember, the other problem you're facing is New York. It's more expensive to do things here than in Providence, Rhode Island.
Room here.
Well, but if you notice the workshop we've done, we've never paid for hotels. We've said participants will have to pay for their own hotels. We can't. Otherwise, all your money goes to paying for rooms for participants. All right. So look at these things. Look at what they're asking. I believe they're asking for 3 pages or 5. I can't remember. 5 pages. Don't give them 28 pages. You know, we've seen things like that. You know, give them 5. You know, which means, you know, 5 is not a lot. It sounds like a lot, but it's not. It really means that you really have to be sharp in your ideas and in your writing.
It's 325.
325. So that even means that, you know, if you give us 5, we'd rather read 3. So, you know, it's not very big. They're not that interested in you giving them a huge narrative. They're more interested in what are you going to put forth, and what are these people going to do, and what are they going to come out of the workshop with. Okay? They're not interested in a long narrative about, you know, the theoretical underpinnings. This is a workshop. A workshop is usually practical, as opposed to a symposium that usually tries to theorize something or to try to summarize where the field is on a particular topic, as opposed to a lecture by a luminary who is here to show you where the field is going. Okay? A workshop is practical. It tries to help people with practical ideas that they can use in their teaching. So I would consider putting something together, either with your colleagues here that have a common problem, common to the languages that are represented in the proposal, or, and I think the modern Greek studies is putting something here, regardless of has nothing to do with the consortium, but they're putting something about the pedagogy of modern Greek for multiple institutions that teach modern Greek. They're all going to come here. When are they coming?
November 3rd.
November 3rd. Okay. So perhaps Arabic programs in the greater New York area or in the consortium. Remember, it's the consortium that's giving you money. I have seen proposals that have basically said, I want the consortium to fund a workshop, but I don't want the other consortium schools to come. Guess where that went? So, you know, think about it. You know your colleagues at the other consortium schools. Penn? No. Harvard? Brown? Yale? Chicago? Cornell. Rumors have it that after this month of May, it will be Princeton and perhaps MIT again. Perhaps. We don't know for sure.
Princeton has been trying to join the consortium.
I think they finally decided that they are going to bite the bullet and pay the big money, which is like $3,000 a year. And Harvard, you know, is debating because that's a lot of money. They may have to like stop eating popcorn for at least an hour.
We really put a chunk of the $28 billion endowment.
Yeah, I know. But so think about that. But I think for you, and if you want to use it as an exercise in grant writing, ask for a local grant here. Whether it's an exploratory grant or a more developed grant, start with that. It's not that hard to get one. You are judged by your peers. I'm not the one who makes the decision.
Who are the peers?
The language committee. I don't vote on it. Simon and I are just pencil pushers. We say, okay, now let's consider the next proposal. Who has something to say? And then we take notes and we say, let's have a vote. Who wants to? We don't vote.
Who is on the language committee?
Language director from Spanish, French, Italian, Japanese, Korean, Chinese, Russian, German, Arabic, Hindi. 2 representatives to represent the other languages, and these 2 are
Yuri and Meni.
Yuri de Groot from Dutch and Yuri Chevchuk from Ukrainian. And then there's someone from the American Language Program, because hey, you know, they're kind of part of us. And someone from Barnard, because hey, they're kind of part of us. Okay? So they're the ones who decide what they want to fund. We used to only accept proposal once a year. We've now gone to a twice a year cycle. What's the deadline for these?
April 6th? Yes, April 6th.
And then the next one, roughly,
The next one, they are, so the next one is going to be in November.
sometimes in November. So if you're not ready for April 6th, think about November. If you just have the beginning of an idea, ask for an exploratory grant. If you already have a better idea of what you want to do, ask for the full grant. You know, it's $21,000 that we have every year to distribute. At $4,000 a grant, we can basically fund 5 grants every year. It doesn't sound like a lot, but trust me, that's about what we get. We get between 5 and 8 projects, grant proposals. I mean,
On average,
yeah.
something like that.
So chances are good, you know, if you write something that's cohesive and makes sense, do so. I know people have gotten some here. You've got one. Yeah. But I mean, grant. You've gotten a grant in the past. You have gotten one. I mean, you know, your colleagues, talk to them about, you know, the process, about what they've asked for, how it's gone. And, you know, there's me and Simon, just drop by and ask us, you know. But it's common sense. Trust me when I say it's common sense. The most important part of writing a grant is giving yourself time. I know that you're all saying, I don't have time, I don't have time, I don't have time. But if you try to write a grant the weekend before, you're not going to be successful. You really have to give yourself time. All right? So that's it for me.
Thank you.
Yeah. I'm expecting contribution in the bucket by the door.